Welcome to Prophecy Insights with Bro Steph. If you haven't guessed, I'm Bro Steph. Welcome. So, I want to talk today about oil, the Jews, and the end times. What does all of these have to do with one another? What's in common with all of these things? Kind of difficult to know exactly where to start because there's a lot of information in the subject matter. So let me start with oil. Okay. And I'm not going to get into all of the intricacies of how oil pricing works, oil futures. I'm not going to get into all that. I'm going to keep it very basic and simple. But I think we're going to discover together that oil is a major player right now in the global economy, in America's economy, in Russia's economy, in Saudi Arabia's economy, China, Iran, so on and so forth. Now, yesterday, the oil cost to buy a barrel of oil went to a negative 40, I believe it was $45 at its lowest. Now, what does that mean to you and me? Now, at first glance, you would go, well, hold on a second. If oil went into the negative arena, in other words, whoever was selling it was willing to pay you to have you buy it from them if you were buying oil by the barrel. They were willing to get rid of that oil and pay you to take it off their hands. You know, what does that really mean? What does that point to? And does that have a negative impact on all of us? The answer to the immediate question is it's extremely negative for the sellers of oil to pay the buyer to take it off their hands. And let me explain to you why. Russia, as an example, makes most of their income from exporting oil. So does China, so does Iran and the Arab nations, Saudi Arabia, etc. They make most of their income from those people that will buy their oil. And that's how they used to bring in a lot of revenue. Now, I'm going to use the analogy of a farmer who's selling corn as an example. All right, so before the COVID-19 thing, corn could be sold to a supplier, someone who was a dealer and had multiple, say, grocery store chains that they would sell that corn to them. And so everybody in the chain would make a profit. The farmer would make a profit. I would buy the corn from him, let's say, and then I'd turn around and sell it to, say, 50 grocery chains. And then I would make a profit. The grocery store then stocks it on the shelf, and you come in and buy it, and they make their money by you buying that corn from them. Now, all of a sudden, something happens, hypothetically speaking, in the food supply of corn where the farmer has no one to sell to because corn has gone into negative territory, meaning his corn, he could get rid of it, but he's going to have to pay the buyer to take it off his hands. Well, the farmer is going to go, heck with that. I'm not going to pay to have you take my corn off my hands. So he burns it. Okay, now we have dwindling corn supplies and inventories, and I'm the broker, the middleman, and I don't have any product to sell, so it affects me. And now the grocery stores start going through their produce inventory of corn, and they have no more product to sell at some point in time. And then corn disappears off the shelf. This is called, de-inflation. It's the reverse of inflation. And to have inflation reverse itself to where everything's going into negative territories, and the producer of a product or manufacturer, whether it be the farmer or whether it be the petroleum company pumping the oil out of the ground, when they cannot make a profit anymore, then that causes a real problem in our supply chains. Now, here's what's going on with oil. Now that we understand kind of the real simplistic idea of how food moves through a supply chain, and I'm keeping this very elementary. I'm doing that on purpose. Here's the deal with the oil right now. Russia depends, China depends, Iran depends, the United States depends on oil. And oil's an important commodity. Now, oil goes into negative territory, minus $45 a barrel. No one's going to be selling it. No one's going to be buying it. And the reason this happened is Saudi Arabia and Russia got into this oil war. They opened the spigots and flooded the market with oil. So inventory, reservoirs of oil were full. So nobody could buy petroleum because they didn't have anywhere to store it. And so what happened is the price of oil started to drop like a rock to coax somebody into buying that raw material. But people said, we can't. We don't have anywhere to put it. So what happens when there's a glut in the system and we have too much oil inventory? It stops selling. People stop purchasing. The price at the gas tank starts to drop. Now, here in California, we're still paying $3, $2.89 to $3 a gallon. What that represents, by the way, if you're in California, is the amount of taxes and fees the state of California is getting for gasoline, which is a petroleum product. Back in the Midwest and in the eastern part of the country, there was a time where prices had dipped into 99 cents a gallon, and then, $1.29, etc. Well, as that continues, because everybody has too much oil, you're going to get into a situation where gas is going to run out at the pumps. Petroleum products that manufacturers used to buy to make plastic goods is going to take a hit. And all of that is going to roll itself into the economy as a whole, to where you get to a place when you have de-inflation, you get to a place where that turns into a depression. That's the issue we have right now. People are in the economic world are very concerned that we're liable in the next few months to go into a depression because of this war that Russia and Saudi Arabia have been having over oil. Oil war, a price war. Who's going to win? We don't know. We don't know if anyone's going to win. But it's liable to collapse those economies if they're not careful, because both of those economies have to have people buying their oil in order to feed their people. In Saudi Arabia, everybody's on the government dole. Everyone gets thousands and thousands of dollars every month from the government because it what used to be the main oil producer. Well, as oil stops being purchased, what's going to happen to those incomes? They're going to start disappearing. And then Saudi Arabia is going to have a real problem on its hands. Anarchy, unrest, etc. So people are concerned about a depression, and then that can end up giving way to hyperinflation. See, right now, if we go into a depression, I'll give you an example of my home. My home right now, I could probably get $600,000 for my home. If we go into a depression, that's going to be cut in half and maybe even lower. And I'll be, looking at being able to sell my home for the price I purchased it 25 years ago. And that's what will happen if we have continued de-inflation or a depression. That's not good. Not good at all. Now, if you've got a ton of money in the bank, you have gold, silver, if you have some cash laying around, you could go to people like me and go, hey, I'll give you $350,000 for your home, which, say I sell it because I end up walking away with 50 grand. They sit on it because they got a ton of money in reserve. They can afford to sit on it for 10 years. And then when prices start returning, they'll be sitting on a gold mine. So that's always true in a depressionary, inflationary cycle, is there are winners because some people just have a ton of money that they can leverage. So the old adage, he who has the gold makes the rules, is absolutely true. It's absolutely true. All right, so with that in mind, I've kind of given you the broad brushstrokes of what's going on with oil and why everyone's upset about it. Well, in terms of the end time scenario, if this continues, de-inflation, depression, hyperinflation, these are the elements in economics that end up leading usually to a war. Germany was experiencing a big depression back in the late 20s, early 30s. That ultimately gave way. Their need for revenue gave way to World War II. Now, why do countries go to war when their economies start to unravel? Well, here's why. Again, let's take oil as the example. If I go to war, the United States goes to war with another country, What happens to the need for oil at that point? People start drawing down on their oil reserves where they used to have too much inventory. They start using more and more oil for what? Tanks, warships, to drive jeeps and all that kind of stuff. And even in the production of some equipment for war, they're going to need oil to make those products. So when the war machine kicks into gear, the oil inventories start to drop and countries start going to other countries to purchase oil. That drives the price of oil back up during wartime, and countries that, make their living on the sale of oil start doing very well. That's why countries end up a lot of times going to war. It's going to be over things like oil or water rights, things like this, food distribution. If another country starts to impinge on another country's, say, territory and starts taking resources from that country, that can cause a war for some of the very reasons why oil can cause a war or water can. It's a protective mechanism that countries use to protect what they believe items that are very important to their people that belong to them. Okay. Well, the Lord told us in Matthew 24, Luke 21, elsewhere, Zechariah chapter 14 in the Bible, that wars are going to come. Rumors of wars are going to take place. Right now, I'm talking about a rumor of war because there isn't an actual battle over this yet. However, it could occur. And in an effort to stay away from a lot of speculation, what I'm doing is just raising the topic so that you talk to others about it and you start thinking about it and contemplating what could this mean for end of days Bible prophecy. Now, let's talk about the Jews and what's going on with the Jews of North America right now. I heard a report today from a reliable source, a source actually in Israel, a newspaper in Israel that's very reliable. The Jews in North America during this COVID-19 episode saw most of the Jews in the United States are in New York. And then you have Jews that are in Canada as well. But the Jews in New York, and especially the Orthodox Jews, saw the death toll of the Jews in New York climbing, and it really concerned them. And they started asking the questions. Why are we here in the United States when Israel has got control over this virus and their death totals are much lower? And true, their population's a heck of a lot smaller than ours. But in the scope of things, Israel is, I don't know if you knew this, they're shipping off to the United States right now an injection that they have proven actually cures the coronavirus. They've seen it happen amongst their test cases. They're sending that to the United States right now. So the Jews of North America and the Jews of New York especially are saying, why do we stay here? Why don't we pack up and go to Israel, our homeland, where God really wants us to be anyway? What are we waiting for? So this discussion is starting to gain momentum in Israel like crazy. I mean, everyone in Israel and now the Jews in New York, this is a huge topic of discussion right now. And you have those in Israel putting out the call. It's time to make Aliyah. What are you waiting for? Call this phone number and we'll help you. That's what's going on. The Jews in Israel are crying out saying, the Messiah is coming. What are you waiting for? The time for Messiah's return is at hand. That's what's going on in Israel, of all places. You would think that we would be saying that like crazy here in America, but the Israeli Jews really believe that the time of Messiah is now. And I mean, I listen to lecturer after lecturer, rabbi after rabbi in Israel that this is what they're talking about all the time. And so it's very interesting. Now, how does that tie into the end times? Jesus said, what? In Matthew, he said, you will not see me again until you learn to say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So when the Jews are ready to acknowledge that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Savior, the Messiah, when their hearts are ready to acknowledge that, Jesus will return. And Zechariah chapter 14 gives us a hint as to when that return is going to happen. It's going to happen in conjunction with Jerusalem being attacked at the end of Daniel's 7 years. Jerusalem's going to be attacked toward the end of that period. And if Jesus didn't return, Jerusalem would perish and the Jews would be destroyed. So that's when the second return of Christ is going to happen, in conjunction with that event. Zechariah chapter 14, if you'd like to read it. So here we have it, right? We have oil, the Jews, and the Messiah's return. All of these things. It looks like we have pointers, landmarks, that signposts that are beginning to point to the return of Jesus. When? No one knows. But the season seems to be getting closer and closer and closer. And we're seeing historical signposts that are saying, go this way. That, in other words, we can tell what's happening. We can see it taking shape. We don't know how God's going to bring it all about. I mean, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. The Lord knows how the pieces fit together. But we can't tell yet how all those pieces are going to fit together and come together. But we know something big is brewing and is going to happen. So, as I said, oil is going to feed into problems in the economy. And the Jews, this is going to create questions in the Jews' minds in North America, and they're going to start considering, is it time to go to Israel? Now, there are a lot of rabbis that say, when you see the Jews pack up out of North America and head, not a couple hundred, but when you see the majority start to go to Israel, that's a signpost that the Messiah's return is getting really close. When the North American Jews hightail it out of America and go to Israel. Well, I just wanted to kind of offer up food for thought and give you some things to really ponder, chew on, and pray over. It's interesting days that we're living in, isn't it? Just really interesting. And again, I want to read this to you. I want to leave you with this. Psalm chapter 9. It's a beautiful psalm. It's full of encouragement and hope. I will praise you, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will tell of all your marvelous works. I will be glad and rejoice in you. I will sing praise to your name, O Most High. When my enemies turn back, they shall fall and perish at your presence. For you have maintained my right hand and my cause. You sat on the throne judging in righteousness. You have rebuked the nations. You have destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. O enemy, destructions are finished forever. And you have destroyed cities. Even their memory has perished. But the Lord shall endure forever. He has prepared his throne for judgment. He shall judge the world in righteousness, and he shall administer judgment for the peoples in uprightness. The Lord also shall be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. And those who know your name will put their trust in you. For you, Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. Sing praises to the Lord, who dwells in Zion. Declare his deeds among the people. When he avenges blood, he remembers them. He does not forget the cry of the humble. Have mercy on me, O Lord. Consider my trouble from those who hate me. You who lift me up from the gates of death, that I may tell of all your praise in the gates of the daughter of Zion. I will rejoice in your salvation. The nations have sunk down in the pit which they made, in the net which they hid. Their own foot is caught. The Lord is known by the judgment he executes. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. For the needy shall not always be forgotten. The expectation of the poor shall not perish forever. Arise, O Lord. Do not let man prevail. Let the nations be judged in your sight. Put them in fear, O Lord, that the nations may know themselves to be but men. And I'll leave you with that. That's a lot to consider, but it's obvious through that scripture that God will always be with us, that he will never leave us, nor will he forsake us. And you can take that to the bank. God bless you. If you don't know the Lord, ask him, Jesus, Yeshua. Ask him into your life today. Go to brosteph.com. Scroll down the page just below the middle of it, and there it says how to ask Christ into your life. I got a few videos and something for you to read there. Do it today. The most important decision of your life. So ask Jesus into your life today. This is Bro Steph, Prophecy Insights. Like us, share us, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.